Hi there, it's Jennifer, and I'm here today to do another video in my cruise series. Today I'm going to be talking about excursions. Should you sign up for excursions? What kinds of excursions should you do if you go on a cruise trip? And I will let you know about my experiences and also some of my thoughts about whether you should do excursions in certain locations or not. All right, so there are some things to consider when you're trying to decide whether or not you should do excursions in certain locations. First of all, you want to think about money. If you have the money to do excursions, I've known people who do excursions at every single port. They'll do a morning excursion, an afternoon excursion, or they do an all-day excursion, whatever. So some people really like to have that kind of thing. Other people like to have a little bit more freedom in the ports where they go. We kind of like to do a little bit of both. Have some excursions, some neat experiences in some locations, and in other locations just walk around and get to know the location where we are. And depending on the excursion, some will allow you to really get to know the place you're visiting, and others whisk you away to do something and you get a really cool experience, but you don't actually get to know the place where you visited. So let me walk you through the cruises we've been on. We've been on 3, and then we're going on our 4th one pretty soon. And so for that one, we have chosen not to do excursions in most places except one, and I'll tell you about that in a second. So okay, our first cruise was to Cabo. We just left out of San Diego. We went to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. It was a short cruise. It was only 4 nights. We decided to do that cruise because I wasn't sure if I would get motion sick or not. Didn't know if I was even gonna like cruising. So love it now, but I wasn't sure, so we did a short one. We left out of San Diego. We had a whole day at sea. We spent 2 days in Cabo San Lucas and then a whole day at sea, and then we were back in San Diego. So we chose to do, in the 2 days we were in Cabo, we chose to do an excursion one day and then kind of look around the town the next day. We did a snorkeling excursion, which was not good. First of all, it was the seas, there was kind of a storm rolling in. The seas were choppy. It was really, really cold. I mean, just like when you got in the water, super cold, and the water was kind of murky because it was stirred up from whatever storm was coming in. So, I mean, how would we have known that was going to happen? I kind of wish they would have canceled it for us and said, you know, it wouldn't really be good for you to snorkel on this day and give us our money back, but of course they didn't do that. So anyway, we went on that the first day, and it was just freezing, and it wasn't the best. We couldn't get any pictures underwater or anything. But the next day, we just went around the town, and so we were looking at little shops and things, and then we were trying to decide where we wanted to eat lunch. And so there were places that were clearly touristy places, and we didn't want to eat at a place like that. We really wanted to sort of do what the locals do. So we went up to an information desk. It was like a little kiosk, and there was a guy there who lived in Cabo, and we went up to him and said, you know, we're looking for places to eat lunch. And we said, where do the locals eat? Like, what's your favorite place? And so he said, well, if you want to go someplace really good and you're willing to walk a little bit, I have the perfect place for you. So I think we probably walked a mile and got to this Mexican restaurant that was amazing. And I don't think there were any other Americans in that place. And it was so worth the walk. So it's always a good idea to ask a local, you know, where you should go if you don't want to just have all the touristy kind of stuff that's provided. All right, so that was it for our first cruise. The second one we went on, we went to the Western Caribbean. And so our first stop was in Cozumel, and in Cozumel we chose not to do an excursion. We just walked around, we did some shops. There were a lot of people hopping on little scooters that they rented and going off around the island. We wanted to kind of walk around and just see what Cozumel was like. We ended up finding this cute little outdoor, you know, open air kind of a restaurant where we had chips and salsa and guacamole and drank beer. And that was it was actually quite fun. So the second port we went to was Costa Maya, and we knew exactly what we wanted to do in Costa Maya. We booked this before we left on our trip. We wanted to see Mayan pyramids. It was amazing, just absolutely amazing. I have no idea how all of those years ago they were able to construct these unbelievable pyramids. So that was well worth it, and we absolutely loved that. So the next place we went was Isla Roatan, which is off the coast of Honduras. And it was a really neat place, and I wish we had thought to get a taxi and go into the main area of Roatan, because at the time when we got off the boat, there was this really cute beach area. They had lounge chairs and cute little, what do they call those, palapas, the things made of dried palm trees where you can just be in the shade, and you know, it looked like a really nice place to relax, and they had little shops and little places to eat. And it wasn't until we'd been there for a little bit that we realized that that area was all fake, and that once the cruise ships left, nobody was there, and so that was not the real part of Roatan. And since then I have read about Isla Roatan, and that there are people who will go there and spend the whole summer or rent a beach house just for a month or something, and that there are a lot of really cool things to do there, and we didn't see any of that. We just were we were on an island and didn't get any kind of cultural experience because the part we were in was not real. So I don't know if other cruise lines do that, but Carnival definitely does. And I guess there's something good about that if you don't have the money to do excursions and the boat drops you off at a part where, you know, there's nothing to do. I mean, they at least give you something to do. And so if we were to go back there, we would definitely either get a taxi and go into the main part of the island, or we would have done an excursion there. Okay, then on that trip, our last place was Grand Cayman. And we had the morning to just kind of walk around Grand Cayman and look at shops and things, and it really was Grand Cayman. I mean, where they dropped us off, this was the real town. And so we went there, and we actually had lunch at a certain place that was nice and walked around a little bit. And I think we bought a couple of little things. And then we had signed up to do snorkeling. And so in the afternoon, they picked us up. And what was nice about it is that the place where we snorkeled was not close to where we are. So they put us on a bus. We got to see more of the island and into some neighborhoods and things. And we got on a boat and had a snorkeling experience, which was just great. So that was really, really nice. So that was our second cruise. The next one, we went to the Eastern Caribbean. The first place we went was Grand Turk, and that is one of the islands of the Turks and Caicos Islands. Oh my gosh, this was probably my favorite excursion we've ever done. It was called A Taste of Grand Turk. And when we got off the boat, there was that fake area that Carnival does. They had a whole beach area and shops and food and all that kind of stuff that was not real. It's only there for tourists. And our friends that we were cruising with that trip, they just wanted to lay on the beach. So they stayed there for the day, and we took off and went on this excursion that was so cool. We started out, we got on this bus, and they took us on a tour around the island. There was a lot of history in that island, and it relates to the US and the military base that was there, and also a lot of stuff that has to do with hurricanes that really clobbered the island a few times, and how the island has really been able to kind of put itself back together ever since cruise ships have started going there. They get millions of dollars a year now for all the tourists coming in, and it's really helped the island kind of put itself back together. So it was fascinating. We saw a salt bog. They dropped us off at this little place to do a little bit of shopping. Then they took us to a place on the other side of the island where there were locals who had handmade things to sell, and they also had us go into this little restaurant where they served us the local cuisine. What a cool thing that was. So that was so much fun. It was such a great cultural experience. And then for the last hour, they took us over to this little resort It doesn't look like any resort that we would see here, but they took us to this place and let us use the private beach. So that was kind of fun. That was probably my favorite excursion of any I've ever done, because we actually got to go do some cool things and get to know the place we visited instead of just laying on a beach towel. The next place we went after that was San Juan, Puerto Rico. And I had done some research on that. There were some cool excursions to do. In fact, there's one that if I ever go back there, I'll do. But let me tell you why we made this choice. We chose not to do an excursion because the place where the boat docked was right by Old Town, San Juan, Old San Juan. And so all of just so cool. It looked like a Mexican version of the French Quarter in New Orleans, and it was just the coolest thing. We just walked around everywhere and looked at shops and looked at places where people live, and then we went to the other side of the island. I ended up with blisters on my feet by the end of this thing, but we went on the other side, and there was this huge fortress, just ancient fortress, and we paid a few bucks and got to go in and tour that whole thing, which was such a cool experience. Then we ended up having some chips and salsa and beer at a little restaurant and stuff. It was so great. And I figured that if I was only going to be in Puerto Rico one time in my whole life, I don't know, maybe I'll be back there again. But I figured if that was the only time I was going to be there, that I wanted to really see San Juan. And we got that experience. It was great. We have amazing pictures. The one excursion that if we go back, I really want to do is a zip lining thing through the rainforest. It's all day. It was like an 8-hour thing. And what you do is you zip line through the rainforest from one place to another, and then you hook up to another zip line and you zip to another place, and then you zip to another place, and now you get to shop a little bit. And then you go through zip lining again, and then you stop, and then there's a restaurant where you have lunch. And then and so you have all these stops, but you're getting to have this experience going through the rainforest. And I thought that sounded like such a cool excursion to do. But like I said, I thought if I only ever went to Puerto Rico one time, I would really want to experience Old San Juan. But if we do end up there, if it ends up being a port on another cruise that we do in the future, definitely doing that one, because it sounded like it would be fun. So see, you have to kind of decide, do I want this really cool, fun experience? Do I want this cultural experience? And yeah, I don't know. They both sounded fun. All right, after that, we went to St. Martin, and at that one, we just kind of wanted to relax on the beach. And so we rented some lounge chairs and umbrellas on the beach. We did go over and go into some shops. They had quite a few shops. I'm not sure. I couldn't really tell if it was an area that is a ghost town after the cruise ships leave. I wasn't really sure, because they had a lot of really different kinds of shops there, and so I don't know. We certainly did not get to know St. Martin, but it was nice just to be on the beach. We were sitting next to some people that we met who were from the UK and had a great conversation with them, and so it was just kind of a neat day. I forced my husband to swim in the ocean. Usually he doesn't like to just like sit in a jacuzzi or swim with tons of people around him, and so there were people in the ocean, but not tons crowding in. So I said, on this trip, you're going to get into a body of water. The shower does not count. And so we did for that one, and it was very nice. And then the last thing we did, we went to St. Thomas, and we decided we were going to go snorkeling in St. Thomas. This one snorkeling excursion that we did, we basically got off the boat, had a little time to look around a tiny bit, got with our excursion, they whisked us away and took us off to one place, which was the best snorkeling. Was it the best snorkeling I've ever done? I did some pretty cool snorkeling in the Bahamas. But how can you beat swimming with sea turtles? It was unbelievable. They were everywhere. Big ones, little ones. We were not allowed to go up and touch them, but if they came over to us and touched us, that was okay. They, some of them came very close. None of them touched me. We were able to get the best underwater shots of those. Oh my gosh, it was just amazing. I could not believe it. And then they took us to another location where we swam over a shipwreck, which is very creepy to look down and see this crashed ship. And then there were some other places back in the rocks and stuff that had really cool things to see, cool fish and everything. It was an unbelievably tremendous experience. And I wouldn't have missed that snorkeling experience. But you know what? I know nothing about St. Thomas, nothing. So that's the trade-off when you do an excursion, because you're opting for either an experience to go do something fun, or you are checking out the place, the place where you are and how people live. And unfortunately, most of the time you can't do both. So I would say that if we go on an Eastern Caribbean cruise again, in San Juan, I would go and do an excursion because I already saw the town. In St. Martin, I would definitely want to see the rest of the place. And in St. Thomas, I definitely would want to go and see St. Thomas. So it really just depends on what you're looking for, One other thing I want to say about excursions is if you decide to go off on your own to do an excursion, like say you get off the boat and there's some people saying they'll take you on a tour, they'll take you snorkeling or whatever, and it's going to be less expensive than what the cruise line offers, you might want to choose to do that. But here's the deal. If you go off on your own, or you hire another, like a taxi to take you around, or another tour guide or something to take you around, and you are late getting back to the boat will not wait for you. If you are on an excursion that was offered through the cruise line, then if your group is late getting back to the boat, they will wait for you. So, you kind of have to think about that as well. So anyway, our upcoming trip, we are going to the Baltic, as you know, and we have chosen only to do excursions in Russia. And the reason for that is that all the other places we're going are very accessible by foot. Except for Helsinki, we've heard that you can buy an all-day transportation pass, and so all their public transportation is available to you, and that you can get to the city center very easily, because apparently that's not close to where the ship docks, and you can take ferries and buses and all that kind of stuff for just the price of this one transportation pass. But it sounds like there are cool things that we can see at every single port. In Russia, we were going to either have to go on excursions or get a Russian visa, because having a passport is not enough in Russia. You have to apply for a Russian visa. It's kind of a complicated process, and for the two of us together to go through the whole process and get our Russian visas, it was going to cost over $700. So we decided not to do that. Instead, we're doing a half-day excursion each day. The first day we're going to be doing an excursion that starts out on a boat and takes us through waterways that show us around the city. I think is it the Neva River? And so we'll get to see St. Petersburg by boat, and then they will let us off the boat for a little bit of shopping and to see this really ornate, amazing cathedral. So that's going to be the first day. And the second day, we're going to be going on a half-day excursion to the Hermitage, which is this amazing museum. And when I say museum, you're probably picturing a large building. It's not like that. Imagine like a university campus with a bunch of buildings, and that's the Hermitage. I mean, it's just huge. It's just building after building and tons of stuff to see, and you probably couldn't even see all of it in a week. So the part that we'll be able to see in one day or half a day is just going to be minuscule compared to what they have. But we thought that would be a really cool thing to see, and a way of learning more about the history of Russia. And so that's what we're doing. And the rest of them we're just gonna do by foot, and we have some little things that we've read about places to go and see in those locations, and we don't really have to sign up for an excursion to do those things. Okay, that was a lot of talking. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave a comment in the space below, and I will do my best to answer your questions. I hope you will tune in later this week when I'm going to have a video about cost comparisons of cruise lines. One of my viewers, Anthony, he's also a friend of my husband and mine, and hi Anthony, he asked about price comparisons with different cruise lines, and so I'm going to share that with you in case you're interested in that. So thanks so much for watching, and if you're not subscribed, I hope you will, and YouTube will let you know when I upload new videos. So take care, you guys. Bye-bye.